Good afternoon. I think we might try to make a start. Any stragglers out there, Zoe? No. So we are very pleased that you could join us today. Over the next 60 minutes or so, you'll be hearing about the work of the Global Forest Observations Initiative with a special focus on the recent engagement and support to the Pacific Island countries. By way of introduction, my name is Kushla Munro and I head up the International Climate Change area in the Australian Department of Environment and Energy. So my responsibilities range from the climate change negotiations currently taking place over in the Buller Zone to overseeing some of the international partnerships Australia is involved with, and this includes the GFOI. And I'd like to give a warm welcome to the other speakers on the panel today. Firstly, to Frank Martin Seifert, who is with the European Space Agency. And Frank Martin has had a very long and proud role in the GFOI since its inception. We are also very lucky to have with us Alfred Rungul from Papua New Guinea. Alfred is the Manager for Measurement, Reporting and Verification at the PNG Climate Change Development Authority. And also from the Pacific, we have Semi Dranibaka, who's the Deputy Conservator of Forests in Fiji, and Semi is also Fiji's National REDD+ Coordinator. And both Alfred and Semi will talk about the important work that they are doing in their countries and how they make use of some of the tools and support provided by GFOI. And I also just wanted to quickly acknowledge some of their other partners from GFOI are here today. A very special welcome to you. So I'll make a few short opening remarks before handing over to the other panellists. Okay, I think if you're in this room, you probably are quite aware of the big picture of the importance of both forests and climate change. Land sector, second biggest source of global emissions and accounts for roughly 20% of all those global emissions. And we know the significance of forests. They're included in the Paris Agreement, and more than 100 countries have included forests in the land sector in their nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. But we also know these issues aren't new, and there's been long-running discussions under the UNFCCC, in particular on REDD+. And it's in that context that we know that forest monitoring has been fundamental to both tracking the emissions, demonstrating results, and also about how you unlock some of the finance into countries. So it's in that context that the GFOI was formed, and I think why it also remains highly relevant today. A fundamental objective for the GFOI is to enable and empower countries to develop their own forest monitoring systems. And to help do this, the GFOI brings together quite a unique mix of skills and the comparative advantage of different country and institutional partners. So this includes country partners Australia, Norway and the US, and most recently the UK has joined. And this sits alongside institutions such as the FAO, CEOS and the European Space Agency. Just a little bit more about the GFOI before I hand over. So fundamentally, it looks about how you provide tailored and holistic support for countries that really does think about what they need. And I guess this means we focus on providing usable data and making sure also that the forest monitoring systems can provide significant co-benefits to countries, especially on issues such as food security and improved natural resource management. So one of the practical examples of some of this work is the creation of a master's level course on REDD+ measurement, reporting and verification. And in that course, participants use the new GFOI REDDcompass tool to prepare gap analyses to identify needs and the sort of next steps that they need to take in developing their forest monitoring systems. So we held the inaugural course in 2016 in Melbourne with participants from Pacific Island countries, and this included PNG, Fiji, Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands. And since this time, we've held REDDcompass courses earlier this year for South American countries in Peru, and also a special course for Indonesia in Australia. So I won't talk any more about that because, as I said, we are very lucky to have both Alfred and Sami here to talk about their experiences in completing the course and also what they are doing in their own countries. But before we hear more from Alfred and Sammy, I'm very pleased to hand over to Frank Martin, who will tell you more about the excellent work that the European Space Agency is doing in the Pacific.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Well, I'm coming from our Earth Observation Center next to Rome in Frascati, and I will tell you why ESA is here at this panel, tell you about Copernicus and the Sentinels satellites which we dedicated to monitor the environment of our planet. European Space Agency has 22 European member states. It has lots of experience, more than 50 years in space research. We are spread all over Europe and are active in all types of space exploration. I'm part of the Earth observation team. We have been since 2001 engaged with UNFCCC as Intergovernmental Observer Organization, at the beginning mainly related to Kyoto Protocol. Then since 2005, when a discussion about REDD were coming up, we were looking into how Earth observation can support REDD with pilot cases. And we are as well supporting international organizations like GovCGold on the REDD Plus sourcebook. And since a month's time, ESA is as well a lead for the Global Forest Observation Initiative, GFOI, where we are supporting specifically R&D activities and space data coordination within GFOI. Since 6 years, we are running a climate change initiative where we are up to now addressing 13 essential climate variables, and we are in the brink of bringing another 9 essential climate variables with projects starting from 2018 onwards. And last but not least, ESA is responsible for the space component of the European flagship program, Copernicus. Well, as you see, Earth observation is an endeavor over more than 50 years. We started with meteorological satellites and are still building meteorological satellites for the next generation for EUMETSAT. On the other hand, we are engaged in dedicated scientific missions, and what you see in the middle, these are precursor missions, and finally the Copernicus missions, the Sentinels. Copernicus itself, as I said, is a flagship program of the European Union. It provides the necessary data for operational monitoring of the environment and for civil security. It consists of an in situ and a space and a service component. ESA is responsible for the space components. The European Commission takes responsibility for in situ and the service component. And last but not least, and most important, all the data under Copernicus are, have an open and free access. Under this website, you can get have access towards the Sentinel data. So what are the Sentinels about? These are families of satellites, and what you see here is that we have now 6 satellites up in orbit, 2 optical satellites, 2 high-resolution radar satellites, 1 medium-resolution imaging and altimeter mission, and just a month ago we launched an atmospheric mission related to greenhouse gases. This is not only observation capability for today, but as well for the future. This flagship program is supposed to last decades, and it's not something which is just one mission funded and then it is questionable if the next one will come up. These are data which will be available as well in a decade and longer time. Now coming to one of the satellite types which are relevant for REDD. It's a radar satellite. That means it's an active system. As it's operating in the microwaves, it can penetrate clouds, which is specifically interesting related to the tropics. And every 12 days you get an image of your area worldwide. What you see here is a number of ever-increasing Sentinel-1 radar applications, many related to maritime and the cryosphere, but as well towards land use and forestry. I'll show you some later on. Sentinel-2 is our high-resolution multispectral sensor. It has 13 spectral bands with spatial resolution between 10 and 60 meters. With a huge swath width, and you see here to the right, and pass over the Amazon forest with 290 kilometers, you can get quite a lot of area mapped with a very high detail. Of these satellites, we have already 2 in orbit. First one was launched in 2015, and the second one in March this year. We are systematically observing all the land surface, including the major islands which are larger than 100 kilometers. So Fiji, for instance, is well monitored. Then Papua New Guinea, we don't have to talk about. That's, of course, that's a large area. So, but what does it mean related to such a sensor? What you see here is our Sentinel-2 images of the western part of Fiji Island from the last 2.5 months. You see a lot of cloud coverage, but due to the very frequent imaging, we will get eventually quite cloud images with a very low cloud coverage, and via mosaicing techniques we can even reduce this further. And if you look here to the western coast of Fiji, you will find Malolo Island, where you see the rich detail what this 10-meter sensors can provide with the banks of the corals and so on. Also, for Sentinel-2, we see during the last 2 years an ever-increasing amount of applications. People are learning how to use this dense time series, and we are expecting more to come in the following years. Precursor activities in Fiji have been mapping within the Recover project based on Landsat data, and those activities will be picked up now with Sentinel-2 data. Another example of state-of-the-art forest monitoring is based on dense time series of the radar satellite Sentinel-1 in Vietnam, where you can identify when areas have been logged. That will be interesting related to illegal logging detection and support towards governance on forest management. A different aspect related to Sentinel-2 back again is here in Tonga, where these satellites can be used for low-cost tool to monitor the extent and status of mangroves and the coral habitats. With this, I'd like to summarize that the European Copernicus program will secure the observations now and in the future. Data availability is free and open. The Sentinels will be a major workhorse with respect to monitoring, reporting, and verification within REDD, and will support activities on climate resilience. We, as a space agency, are eager to listen to the community of the Pacific Islands and other user communities to understand their needs, to understand and initiate more R&D to fulfill these needs, looking at problems with data access and improve applications toward the countries. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Frank. That was a really interesting presentation, and you'll get your wish because you're going to get to hear from our colleagues. So over to you, Alfred, with a small change to the slides.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you, MC. Before I start my presentation, I want to, on behalf of the PNG government, thank the GFOI for the invitation for this wonderful side event, for this wonderful REDDCompass tool. I'll go straight to the presentation. This is my presentation outline. I'll give a brief overview of PNG, and then the scope of our work regarding MRV REDD+ in PNG, just a general what we are doing in the country. And then I'll go straight to REDDCompass, just give a brief how the REDDCompass was assisting us, and then the component of REDD+ that we found really helpful to us, and then the result, which is the roadmap coming out from the REDDCompass tool. And then also I'll just briefly highlight the current capacity we have. Using the REDD+, we identify the capacity we have in the country, and also I'll highlight needs that we need in the country to assist us in our REDD+ MRV using the REDDCompass. And then benefits, I highlight some of the benefits for the roadmap of REDDCompass tool, and then conclude with the way forward. As you all, I think, know already, PNG is located in the Pacific. It's one of the biggest islands in the Pacific. PNG is very tropical country comprised of 600 small islands. We have 800 different, more than 800 different languages, very diverse. 85% of the population lives in rural areas, depends on agriculture, and then 97% of the population are landowners. They own the land. We have forest cover of 77.8% with land mass of 46.9 hectares. And we have a very high diverse forest type, which includes 12 different forest types. This is just a brief overview of PNG. The scope of work in PNG in regards to REDD+ MRV in the country. As you all know, PNG with Costa Rica introduced the REDD+ concept in COP11 in Montreal in 2011. Since then, PNG government has taken the initiative to move forward with REDD+ concept through the Climate Change Development Authority, which it's the agency coordinating all the climate change activity in PNG, and with PNG Forest Authority, which is the technical agency that provide data for all our REDD+ activities. Since then, we have so many partners, organizations that help us in developing our MRV REDD+, including, I think, a UN REDD program from FAO and other partners, and also World Bank through FCPF. This is some of the partners that has helped us in the country to drive the REDD+ concept. Through this assistance, PNG was focused on developing the National Forest Monitoring System, Forest Reference Level, National Red Plus Strategy, and the safeguard. The NFMS is completed. It's now, we are using 2 different systems to monitor the forest, collect that system, and the Terra PNG, which is from the Amazon Terra. Our forest reference level was submitted. It's now under review. Last review process, I think in December or January 2018, it will be published on UNFCCC website. National Red Plus strategy was launched in October by the government. Also, now we're working on SIS, our safeguard. The 2 most important agencies, the Climate Change Development Authority and PNG Forest Authority, which from these partners we have got training to assistance in developing the country's capacity to try to address these 4 components of REDD+. Okay, then we were introduced by REDDcompass in 2016. The 2 major agencies was invited to go to attend the training in Melbourne. From the training, it was a new experience for us to use REDDcompass. But after the training, we really find it really useful. We acknowledge and appreciate that REDDcompass was a tool that forest countries or REDD+ countries can use. This tool is definitely reliable for us, accessing the methods, the guidance, and the tool to design our MRV, and it's we can say that it's highly recommended for any country that can use to develop its MRV system. Also, the REDDcompass provides guidance and analyze current capacity and gaps, which we PNG find it really helpful to highlight our gaps and capacity needs. This is it's very beneficial for us that the REDDcompass was used as a guide to tell us where we need help or funding support from partners or any organization. From the REDDcompass, this is the 4 major team that we focus on: institutional arrangement, policy design and decision, and measure and estimate, and report and verification. Under these teams, PNG, we went through this tool. We identified 20 concepts and 83 actions that needed for us to focus on, based on these 4 teams, under these 4 teams. So from this, we got the result. Most of the teams, we haven't completed the teams yet, because some areas we need support, more capacity buildings, technology transfer. Only 40 actions has been done. I'll briefly give an example of some of these actions, and 63 is required training, funding, and further improvement. Also, the PNG implementation of the road covers all teams, as I mentioned, and the concept of REDD+. PNG roadmap also takes stock of our current capacity, which we identify our gaps that now we are working on. This is some of the current capacity. From the using of the roadmap, we also identify our own capacity we have in the country, not only identify gaps. This is some of the example of our current capacity. We have a Climate Change Management Act in place, which is a legal document that guide all the climate change activities. We have a national approach in reporting our REDD+ activities. We also identified our REDD+ activities and the stakeholders that will be involved in the REDD+ process. Also, as I mentioned, we have two systems, our remote sentinel and GIS system, included Cycus analyze software that we are using to analyze our data. And also, now we have the National REDD Plus strategy endorsed by the government, which is a guiding document that will guide our progress in REDD Plus. And also, as I mentioned, we have the National Forest Monitoring System developed. You can access the National Forest Monitoring System for PNG through this link. And also the submission of the forest reference level, which we identify as our current capacity we already done. This is just an example of how we identify our needs. Like example, the first agency response for REDD Plus estimate yet to be identified. It's from the REDDcompass tool. The status, we have done it already, so it's done. It's part of the 40 actions done. Some of the needs, it's still, we are currently doing it. The budget constraint to support sustainability of the overall MRV system. We are working on it. We are seeking funding, partners that can help us in this, this support, and establishment of processes for transfer of emission reduction and benefit sharing. We also are seeking support from partners, and also from the last two bullet points, the needs partly support. We have FAO in the country, JICA, and other partners that are looking at some of these areas. This is from the REDDcompass that we identify, and it guides us to seek support from other partners. Okay, benefits. The REDD Plus is useful for PNG government, as I mentioned. The organization taking the lead, which is the Climate Change and the Forestry Authority, use this to identify and strengthen the capacity. We also improve our gaps through capacity building of key technical offices in the country. And the REDDcompass tool is also an ideal mechanism or a platform to seek assistance from donors, agencies to support our technical needs, and also finance our equipments, technology transfer. We need technology, like Frank mentioned. Some of the information we need are still lacking. We need some support in this area, which we find REDD Plus that really, from this tool, it's very comprehensive. It really highlighted the things that we need. The way forward, and then to conclude, PNG CCDA, PNG Climate Change is developing regulations. Also, we are using this REDDcompass tool to guide us develop our regulation under our new act, Climate Change Development Act. So this is one of the bonus from REDDcompass. And also currently PNGFA and CCDA is utilizing assistance. Like I mentioned, we identify gaps, areas that we need technical transfer. Then we ask for assistance from existing donors or donors that might help us in developing the system. Also, the MRV system, as you know, is a very technical system. So we strongly recommend for technical officers to be, build their capacity in these areas to address most of the activity data to report on REDD Plus. So the way of conclusion, I think more information for GFOI. They have a lot of social site and website that you can find. I think some of the stories from our activities are in the website. I think I will conclude with my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alfred. That was really detailed and really interesting in terms of how you shared those lessons, and obviously also encouraging others who may not be aware of some of that assistance to also look at GFOI. So we might just hand over to Sammy, and he will give his presentation of his experiences in Fiji.
Thank you, Kusula, and thank you, Alfred and Frank, for the presentations. I will be presenting on the Fiji RED Plus program, focusing mostly on the MRV and the forest reference level. Also, I would like to acknowledge the Global Forest Observation Initiative for the capacity building that has been done, especially to the people, specialists that do undertake our MRV and forest reference level work. And this has been beneficial to the people and also to the work that needs to be done on our MRV system. So that's where Fiji is in the Pacific, with a population of 900,000, not even 1 million. And the work that has been done on RED Plus in Fiji, we started off in 2009 on a scoping workshop. And also there have been a national RED Plus policy. And we have also prepared our emission reduction proposal, especially to the readiness program that FCPF has assisted us with 3.8 million for the readiness program on RED. And also we have commenced work on our MRV work on SESA and also drivers, the studies on drivers, on the work that needs to be done on our readiness program. So just the chain of events that have eventuated out of our RED Plus program in Fiji. Institutional arrangements, it's initiated by the Ministry of Forests at the ministry level and with the climate change unit. And also we have a steering committee that are headed by the ministry. And we have our divisional working group at the divisional level. So the policy objectives that we have is supporting and strengthening. We have two major objectives, and that is to address the drivers of forest-based carbon emissions through forest removal and degradation, and also encourage the drivers of forest-based carbon sinks, and that is to increase the forest stocks. And our RED Plus MRV component, and most of the work that we have been eventuated out of our training that we've had under the GFOI initiative, under the REDDcompass, and these are some of the work that had eventuated out of the training that we have. Based on the decision, we have used the two combination of remote sensing and ground-based, especially on the carbon inventory. So we have used two combinations, looking at remote sensing and also ground-based. And the activities, three activities that we have identified, and that is enhancement of carbon stocks, and also avoid deforestation through establishment of conservation areas and land use planning, and also avoided forest degradation through sustainable forest management. So these are our additional RED Plus activities. The carbon pools, we have identified two, and that is above ground and also below ground. We have chosen to do a stepwise approach, and as information come through, then we will consider the other carbon pools, and mostly focusing on CO2 gas emissions. The scale, we have included 7 islands in this study, and also about 94% of the area, of the total area of Fiji, so the 7 major islands that we have accounted in this area. And also our forest definition is based on the FAO definition in 2015, and that is the definition that we use for our forests. The forest cover in 2008, that is the areas that you can see in green, that is the mountainous upper upland forests. You see that the dark green color signifies the forest area, and you can see the non-forest area based on the western side of the main island of Viti Levu. We have chosen the approach 3 and on our activity data, and also emission factor of tier 2 that we are using on the reference period. We have chosen from 2006 to 2016, period of 10 years to base our activity data on, and also from 2006 to 2016 based on the Landsat image that we download our activity data. On the assessments, we have based on our 2006 NFI plots. That's looking at assessment of the emissions that are coming out from our NFI plots, and also the PSP, permanent septal plots, about 100 plots that we have conducted, and that is basically the layout of the PSP plots that we will measure. Our emission factor, we have used the CHAVE factor, and you can see that that is the biomass functions that we've chosen, and calculating from the tree height to biomass to carbon and CO2 equivalent. So basically that's what we wish for emission factor. And also the carbon emissions that we've chosen from forest degradation, especially from our selective logging. And that is the formula that we're using to calculate the total log emissions. And that is the emission factor felled plus the emission factor from felling damage that are from the residual stand plus the emission factor in the logging that has been caused by logging. So these are the areas that we were selected from our selective logging operation. So we've come out with a factor, and that is the factor that we have calculated. On the carbon emissions from grasslands, there's areas that we have identified as grassland, ridge, fernland, bamboo, and shrubland. These are the areas of grasslands that we also will assess emissions, and we've come up with a mean measurement of 72 tons of carbon per hectare. We're also doing a mangrove forest assessment using the sampling, 50 meters apart of sample plots, 3 by 3. We are currently conducting this sampling, and we are having the information to also get the emissions out of our mangrove plantations. Also, we have a RED Plus pilot site where we are conducting different activities, identifying the assessments that need to be done under the different biodiversity assessments, and also the capacity building of the pilot site, especially through sustainable forest management and conservation. And we have done a lot of capacity building too, especially on our RED Plus site, and particularly conserving some of the endemic. Insect is endemic to the RED Plus area, which comes out in every 8 years, which is very significant. So that is the only, last month is the only time that they do come out after 8 years of in the soil. So that is very significant for our RED Plus site in conserving. So capacity building. We have also been working with our consultants from Hamburg University on the MRV work that are being undertaken, and also the introduction of a HART system, which is trying to clean all the data that we have from the NFI and be able to compile the relevant reports that we need. Training, capacity building training on database, and also field assessments that we train our officers in. Also the outreach, especially on our RED Plus, in the different types of shows that we do, government road shows, trying to do a lot of awareness on RED Plus under this. So the ongoing activities that we're doing, especially on REDD+, is the construction of our FRL, which is supposed to be ready by December 2017, and also establishment of our National Forest Monitoring System next year in February. We also are undertaking our CESA that should conclude next year, and also a development of feedback and grievance redress mechanism, and that should conclude in December this year. And also we're doing a study on drivers of deforestation and forest degradation, which is supposed also to be completed this year. So these are the ongoing work, also with our consultants that are gathering relevant information. That is a presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sami. Really pleased to see how much progress Fiji is making and for you to be able to share that story and knowledge with us here today. We do have time for some questions and some answers as well from the panel, but I would like to just to invite Mark Sadler to join us on the panel. So Mark is here representing the World Bank, who is the newest member to the GFOI. And Mark is currently the practice manager for climate funds management at the bank. So please join us, Mark, and maybe you'd like to make a couple of remarks. Maybe in between Alfred. Oh, no, you'll sit there. So think of those questions you want to ask us.
So Kushla, thanks very much for inviting us up. Obviously, many of you, I'm absolutely sure, know the FCPF. At the bank, we've just brought all our carbon and climate funds actually into one bucket, one unit, and I actually manage that unit. It doesn't include the SIF, which of course is a standalone facility where we just provide the secretariat function. I mean, as I said, the FCPF, I'm sure, is known to many of you in the room, provided technical and financial support to almost 50 countries. And currently the FCPF ISFL is helping about 23 countries establish their ER programs. And obviously, whilst there's been a lot of progress, there are still gaps that relate to data and capacities and methodologies. And you know, from FCPF's viewpoint and that of the bank, for that matter, you know, we can see clearly how GFOI has played a critical role for all countries, not just those that we're currently working with, but and in a couple of particular areas. I mean, I think one is very clear around country collaboration. There's a lot that's going on, but GFOI has enabled us to get better organised at the ground level, and you've heard a couple of examples there of countries where you can see, you know, a number of partners are actually working alongside and with FCPF. I think it's also had some very positive impacts around consistency of advice and approaches, and clearly, I mean, you've just heard about it, but REDDcompass, some new tools that I think have been absolutely critical for our client countries and others to move forwards. And on that piece of moving forwards, you know, as countries really start getting into implementation, as we start looking towards reporting on NDCs, you know, the role of GFOI going forwards is going to be even more critical, and we see it as an incredibly important partner. And in that regard, you know, recently we were very pleased to be asked to join the leaders group as FCPF, and that came in a letter. We'll send you a letter, but we'd very happily like to confirm that we will actually be joining the leaders group and to building on the partnership and helping in any way that we possibly can.
Okay, do we have any questions? And if you do have a question, can you just say your name and where you're from?
My name is Gamoga from Papua New Guinea, and I'm very interested in the presentation did by Frank. Very impressive presentation. And I was just wondering, the images that you said, you know, they are free. In PNG, like what Alfred has presented, we use 2 systems to monitor our forest. And that is a wall-to-wall, 2 approaches, one wall-to-wall and then point sampling. The point sampling we use the collect developed by FAO, and that is linked to the what's this?
The CPAL system?
No, link to Google. Link to Google Earth, and then we generate our images, especially the already prepared images from Google Engine, and high resolution images from Google Earth. And our here link with Google Earth, because from our findings in our country, about 50% of our sample points are still falling on low resolution images. But we would like if maybe more high resolution images of our Pacific, so that we could monitor our forest and land use well. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the question. When you're talking about high resolution, is it 10 meters, what I described for the Sentinel-2, enough, or you're talking about very high resolution towards the 1 meter capability of satellite? Pardon? Sentinel-2, okay. Sentinel-2 is designed to make a carpet mapping. That means the whole country. And with the 2 satellites which we have currently in orbit, we will be able to have every 5 days all the land surface, including major island of more than 100 kilometers mapped. That includes as well the water area, about 20 kilometers around those. I'm not so familiar with all the islands which we have, and I learned that also Papua New Guinea has a lot of smaller islands around. One has to verify and look up to which extent all the islands are really in the acquisition plan.
Do we have another question? Oh, over there, sir.
My name is Faturi. I'm from Samoa, and currently based in New York, working for our permanent mission. Mine is not a question, it's more by way of a comment. RED Plus, it's one of those concepts, or at least for me, people are trying to really try and understand, and it was the main reason why I came. But more importantly, it's because I know that 2 other fellow Pacific countries are involved in the process, and especially with Australia and the World Bank and some of our own development partners. I think for me the most important thing is that I think some of you in the room will probably know that the Green Climate Fund Board has decided to include RED Plus in terms of funding proposals. Currently, I represent small island developing states on the Green Climate Fund Board, and I see this as an opening. But I think too often also, except for Papua New Guinea, and I think in the case of Fiji, a lot of other small island states tend to think that we hardly have any forests, so therefore we're disqualified. But I think it's really encouraging to know that it is possible. So I think maybe the challenge now is if something works for Fiji and Papua New Guinea for that matter, I think that will allow other small island developing states to be willing to come forward and also be able to be part of, even if it's a regional approach. So I just want to congratulate Papua New Guinea and for taking a leap of faith. And I know, of course, that Papua New Guinea had always been a true champion of this, and I think now it's going to bear some fruits. And I think that is and I'm glad in a way too that we have partners who have their level of confidence in terms of the importance of this. And I think while on the other side they're still negotiating. I think here these are solutions to some of the issues that have been discussed at the other. So I thank you so much.
Thank you for Tori. There's actually quite a lot in there. I don't know whether you wanted to respond, Alfred or Semi.
Thank you, Ambassador. Just to add on what Ambassador said, we encourage the regional sharing of ideas, sharing of what we are doing, experience. So I think from the training we had in Melbourne, I think Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomon Island, and PNG are attended. So, I mean, we did raise a question if is it possible that we have this kind of roster of experts just to share with the region what we are doing and what we are finding difficult in areas, and also the Red Plus, as the ambassador was saying, GCF, I think it's 500 million. This is an opportunity for us, Fiji, PNG, that we are now in the phase of trying to see how Red Plus will play out. But now what I understand is just 500 million is just for a pilot. So we don't know how it will, there's no guide how this 500 million will share among all the countries. So I need some clarification on this too. So I'm trying to follow up with the negotiation, still. But thank you very much for the comment and
Thank you. And before I just go to the next question, I might just respond also from Australia's perspective. I think that's an excellent point in terms of how do we share that knowledge. Well, it's globally, but in particular, we think about our region and in the Pacific. And we know that, so Australia, with Brunei, hosted the Asia Pacific Rainforest Partnership Summit last year. And we had a lot of Pacific Island leaders and people from the country at that summit. And it was after the Paris Agreement. And what was so significant, in terms of what I heard, was that when we know that the forests are critically important, but in terms of what Pacific Island countries could say they were doing and in support of the Paris Agreement, I thought that was very significant. But it also comes off on a lot of work and capacity building that the World Bank has been doing, that Mark referred to under the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, and not all countries are part of that, but also UN REDD. And I see that the Global Forest Observation Initiative, because there's just so much out there, so it's sort of like, well, how do you get started and how do you get the right partners providing you with the right information and advice? And fundamentally, it's all about countries being able to decide what they want to do. It's not somebody telling you what you want to do. And I guess, lastly, I also agree, I much enjoy this part of the the conference in terms of what we're actually doing than sometimes over in the negotiations. So thank you. And I think we had a question over here.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Donna Lowe, and I'm from Jamaica. Okay, I'm inspired by the two presentations, not only the fact that these two presenters are from island states like Jamaica, but they have successfully gone ahead and demonstrated that REDD on islands are possible. Jamaica is at the starting block, at the very start of the process. So I'm looking forward to you for some exchange of experience, some guidance, so we'll have the dialogue outside. In addition, I have a question. On my island, where 75% of my forest cover, actually we have just about 440,000 hectares of forest. And 75% of that is sitting in the hands of private owners. The government only have oversight of 25%. How then, when I'm implementing my roadmap for REDD, do I take this into consideration?
Thank you. In Fiji, we also have private companies that also own forest plantations, and also where the government supervises or looks at the native forests that we have. There has been, under the MRV system, we also included our plantations and getting data out of them, so working with private companies to also include them in the assessment of our emissions level. So that should start from under our REDD Plus policy that states that all have to abide by the policies that are given and also regulations that are given out. So under our institutional arrangement, it is very important to really have our cabinet decisions that are being made so that everybody has to abide by whatever that has been given. So that is very important. Whenever we start our REDD Plus, in 2009 we had our policies, and we have continually informed our cabinet on the decision that needs to be taken. So we start from, institutional arrangement, we start from the very high top level of the government to be able to implement some of these REDD Plus, and especially doing the assessments of all our forests from plantations and also the native forests. So that is very important for us to go through. Also, I would like to introduce Dr. Prem, who is our MRP consultant from Hamburg University. Maybe he can add a little bit more on that. Thank you.
In addition to what Semi said, 92% of the forest in PG also belongs to a group of people which we call Matankali. That's a group of people that owns the forest land. So it's already a kind of private land, private ownership over the forest. Government has only 6% of the land in Fiji. So the land tenure is very strong in terms of ownership and access in Fiji. And I think Fiji is going to develop an emission reduction program next year. And what they are planning, like Fiji has a very strong representative from the landowners, that's called Land Trust Board. On behalf of Fiji landowners, the farmers, Land Trust Board take the lead to have a lease agreement with the government, the landowners, which they want to enroll their forest under REDD Plus. There will be a lease for a certain period that it is still not decided either it is 33 years or 99 years. So the first, there will be the collection of interest from all the local landowners. Then there will be a selection of the landowners the Fiji government need to do according to deforestation risks and the management of REDD. Then the Fiji government is going to implement free consent policy. Either all the landowners give consent to the Fiji government to enroll their land under the REDD Plus program. Then currently they are negotiating and developing the benefit sharing mechanism, how the REDD Plus share would be divided among the state and non-state actors, and most of the shares, how it goes to the landowners. So they have like a joint agreement or joint management process between the government, state actors, and the landowners. So that could be a very good example how private sectors or how private forest owners can share, can enroll their forest under the REDD Plus with their own decisions, provided with the sufficient information about the pros and cons of the REDD by the government. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Donna, for the question. I think our land tenure system is very different. PNG, we have 97% owned by landowners. I think for Fiji is 75, sorry, 92. Okay, for PNG, as I mentioned, we have a Climate Change Act. This act is, highlights all the activity in climate change, including the REDD+ activities and accounting of greenhouse gas, which covers REDD+, AFLU and land use system. Currently in the country, this act is guiding all the activities if private sectors, we don't have too much private sector only in the land, but if the private sector is trying to engage with the local landowners, then they have to submit to this act as a guide for government to control. Currently in the country, we as I mentioned, we are developing regulations, also reviewing our existing legislations, looking at different sectors like forestry sectors, agriculture, land sectors, land use, planning. So it's a process that FCPF is also supporting us in this. We are trying to get all the stakeholders and see which areas we highlight, and then we can work together to address this. When you talk about this REDD+, it's involving so many people and so many stages. Like I mentioned, we are taking a national approach, but we have to look at the subnational approach, and then we have to go down to the district, and then the landowners, which I think we can say that they are private people owning the land trying to engage in REDD+. So this is one of the areas that we are looking at. We have provincial, we call it provincial climate change committees that deal with most of the not REDD+, but all the climate change activities, including REDD+. So when you see our institutional arrangement, we have a provincial committee that's led by the provincial governor that reports to the subnational and then reports to the national, which the office, and then it goes up to the minister. So it's kind of depend on how the country structure the institutional arrangement, and also the government taking the lead in what they want to happen. Like I mentioned, in a policy direction, policy directive coming down to different agencies that this is what will happen, this is the guide, this is the act, this is the process. So it tied in all the activities if we want to do anything in the country. So it's just how we're engaging at the moment. We are still working on it. Our National REDD+ strategy is highlighting everything. I think you go to, I didn't put the website, but just type in PNG National REDD+ strategy. It's highlighted every steps, and it's very comprehensive document to look at as an example what we are doing at the moment. I also there's a presentation side event next week that it will focus on the National REDD+ strategy for PNG. So this will be a detailed side event that yeah.
Thank you, Alfred. Are there any final questions, any burning questions anyone wanted to raise? If not, we might conclude our session. Obviously, thank you for coming and for your interest and attendance. Spread the good word out there. And thank you to Frank Martin, to Alfred and Sammy. We'll be around for a little bit longer. And also we have Sarah here, who's the, just remind my memory, Sarah Carter, who's the GFOI R&D Coordination Component Manager. And so if you want to find out more. And if you're really keen and want to get involved in the GFOI, we are having our next plenary in Colombia next year. So just put a plug in for that one as well. And there are some brochures just at the back on that one. So again, thank you, and join me in thanking everyone today.
For those who are interested in further RED side events, at 6 o'clock there's a RED plus side event at the European Pavilion in room Tallinn.